Jen. I am just thrilled to be here. Not necessarily happy about the topic, I have to admit. It's not a topic that any of us want to talk about, and I might be the queen of that. But I am here today with Angela Yours, and to be honest, I might be doing my own live therapy session today with a grief counselor. I'm not kidding. I out of your own need sometimes comes the greatest places to share. And I got so much feedback from our original How to Thrive During Challenging Times video, in particular about this topic of grief. When we sent out the survey, so many of you said that you wanted to talk about grief because we're all grieving something right now. We've all lost something. I've talked to mommies who they're young kids who had just started kindergarten, first and second grade, and their kids are missing the social aspect. I have so many seniors, class of 2020, both high school and college. We love you because we know you're grieving the normal way of celebrating you. This is your year. And I know that there is grief there. I have friends, and we can't compare grief. I know that. But I have friends that I feel guilty for feeling grieving about, because I have friends that have lost people in this issue, and they couldn't be with. My precious friend Susie lost her mom, and she couldn't be with her, knowing that she was going, and couldn't be with her because she was not in a place where she could access her and be with her. Thank goodness for technology. That's why we're here today with you, that can bridge the gap, but it doesn't solve our grief. And I personally am grieving the loss of my precious daughter, Corinne, and her amazing fiance, Dylan, and his amazing family, joining our two families together. Literally, yesterday she was supposed to be married in San Francisco, and tomorrow we would have had a big party. So it really hurts my heart. So I would love for you to post, like, let's create a community so we can say, I see your grief. It's okay. We can be positive. You guys know me, I'm a realist optimist, meaning I want to acknowledge the real pain in the world. That's why we do the work we do in trafficking, and we deal with the young women, and they have so much to grieve, their childhood and all of the things that were stolen and robbed from them. So we deal a lot with grief, but we're in global grief right now, and we're in anticipatory grief, because some of you are anticipating something that you may be grieving, even if it's a vacation that you were going to take, because we're realizing vacations are so much more than just the place we go. It's the why and who we gather with. And so I just wanted to be able to have somebody that this is their role, and they know grief well, and they help people navigate consistently. So Angela Yours is with us today through just a series of incredible things we connected, because she wanted to connect me with an incredible author that hopefully we're going to be featuring soon. Stay tuned, New York Times bestselling author, to talk about the issue of trafficking. But today we're talking about what has been stolen from us. And so Angela Yours is here. She is a grief counselor. She has Creative Bridge Consulting, and we will give her information both in the comments, and she will give it at the end how you can get in touch with her. She does do virtual counseling if you need an individual session after this. She also founded 11 years ago Rock Goodbye Angel. So she is familiar with grief in her own life and in others. So Angela, welcome, and thank you for being here with us today to navigate us through this thing called grief that we really don't want to talk about or feel.
Yeah, it's such a taboo subject, isn't it? You don't ever really want to talk about it, but you have to. You know, it's not a matter of if you're going to grieve, it's a matter of when and how. It's a common denominator. It doesn't just affect one socio or economic class. We all are going to deal with it at some point.
Yeah. I tell you, with my daughter's wedding, I've tried everything. I've tried keeping myself busy.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried, because I didn't want to break down, because I thought if I start crying, I'm not going to be able to stop. Mm-hmm. I've thrown money at it. I've tried to buy her all sorts of stuff. I've tried to be creative and find a fake way of coming together, meaning we're all spread out throughout the country, so it includes travel. I know other people are doing different things, but I've tried everything to not feel the feeling, to be honest with you. And so after this, I might have a good cry, but tell us how. You said it's the how we do it and the when it's going to come up. So talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and part of part of grieving well is knowing yourself. And sometimes that means we have to pause. And with this pandemic, especially, a lot of us have been forced to pause. You know, we can't go anywhere. We can't do what we're used to doing. We can't be as busy or distracted as we normally are. And it's caused a lot of those feelings, like you talked about, to kind of overwhelm us and overtake us. And we're not used to it. We're used to the distraction, or we're used to the added activities, or the shop therapy, or the, you know, whatever it is. And so those feelings can sometimes start to trigger us in ways that we used to be able to keep them at bay. So when I say, you know, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, sometimes we can compartmentalize really well. And so knowing yourself, and sometimes starting to really investigate and start to peel apart layers of yourself that you didn't really know you had, is a really good thing. It's called good grieving. And one way to do that I really love, and I'll go ahead and do a plug, I don't get paid for it or anything, but I love the 5 love languages that Gary Chapman talks to and references. And if you have never heard about that, or that book, or even that website, it's just it's the number 5lovelanguages.com. They have a very simple, like, I think it's 25 or 30 question assessment, and you can find out what your love language is and how you feel loved, with how you give it and how you receive it. And many, many times the way we handle grief is how we need to feel loved, and how we need to be replenished, and how we need to feel validated. And you know what you said, just learning and how to throw things at grief is sometimes just trial and error in trying to figure out what we need in order to grieve well. So that's kind of the first thing that I really challenge people to do, is figure out what works well for you. Don't try to figure out, don't let other people tell you how to grieve. Figure out yourself.
That's so good. So I love the 5 love languages. In fact, that's part of one of the people that we are going to ask to be a part of our global training center for this issue of trafficking, because it is so individual, the way we receive love and give love. And when I look at that, you said 2 really important things to me: pause and love. So interestingly enough, we do all of our events at Selah Ranch. Selah, the word S-E-L-A-H, means to pause and reflect and to think on these things. It's a very sacred word, and it can be used in music, right? So if you don't have a pause in music, it's just noise. And so what I'm feeling in my own head, honestly, I have not paused to grieve. And with my daughter's wedding, like I said, I've thrown money at it. I've talked to her and tried to carry her grief, because what's my grief compared to hers in my heart and my mind? But when I think about, I have not paused to do that, nor have I looked at my way of grieving would to be talk about it. And here I am, right? Because my love language is words of affirmation, right? So it makes complete sense that you would bring that in. And here we are talking about grief. So in a way, I'm self-caring, but hopefully helping others as I do that by having this opportunity to talk through grief. And then of course, I personally love just quiet, to pause long enough to feel my feelings and to journal. Because again, that's words. And I know that that's where it will come. So thank you. That I already have my assignment. Anybody else, right? Put in the comments below, right? If you already feel like you have an assignment, we know for sure you can go to 5lovelanguages.com. But if words are your thing, you may need to talk it out with somebody just to have them listen and, maybe journal it out. I do want to say one of the most powerful things I ever heard about grief is in the Jewish culture, they have a thing called sitting Shiva, which means you just sit with somebody and you don't say anything. The person that's grieving, a community of people, one person or a community comes and just sits with that person in grief with no words. And I thought that was one of the most powerful things that I have ever heard. So how does community affect grieving the people around you, Angela?
Yeah, that's one thing, especially in Rock Goodbye Angel. I was the founder of that organization. When we do our support groups, and again, it's changed now that we're doing it online, just the knowing you're not alone, just being in a community of others that are hurting and have the same pain. We cannot carry someone else's grief. The weight of our grief, I tell everybody, it's like we all bring in this backpack, okay? And we can unpack when we're together the weights or the stones of our grief. And we have a choice when we're together, whether or not we take those and put them back in our backpack when we leave, when we're together, or whether we leave them there because we feel safe and we feel secure and we feel like, you know what? I feel relief and I feel like I've talked this out, or I've unpacked it, or I have a new coping skill to deal with it, or I feel like someone else can relate, or you know what, I feel like I've destroyed whatever that pain was, or I've let it go, or I've laid it at the foot of the cross, or whatever it is that you've done. And so you get to choose whether or not you want to put it back in your backpack. You also have a choice, and this is, again, the whole codependency, and it's a whole nother topic, but you also have a choice whether or not you gather and take up other people's grief and put it in your backpack. There's so many of us that love to be helpers and fixers and care for other people. So, we have to be real cautious about taking other people's grief and wanting to fix it and tend to it and take care of it. So we really have to be cautious about tending to ourselves. It's the whole, airplane thing. We have to put the mask on ourselves and take care of ourselves and our own grief and our own coping skills before we can even manage or even really love and care and take care of someone else and what they're going through. And we also can't speculate that what's going to help us and what's going to be good for us is also going to be good for someone else, because with love languages, it's different. And, with me and my story, I won't go into the whole long story, but my introduction to grief and my husband's introduction to grief was the loss of our child, our stillborn daughter, 21 years ago. And my husband and I didn't know about love languages or anything back then, but my love language and my top love language is gifts, and his is physical touch. Well, my 0 love language is physical touch, and his 0 love language is gifts. So we were on totally different, opposite of the spectrum with the love languages. So we, over the years, really had to learn to meet each other in the middle. And it caused a lot of tension. And so I encourage a lot of, you guys, if you're feeling tension in your relationships and tension in those around you and not being able to help you through your grief and help you understand your grief, it might just be that they're trying to love you or help you or fix you through their love language or what's working for them. And that's why I really encourage you to pause or get a good counselor who's going to help you unveil that and really help you work through that with you individually and what's going to work for you personally, because you are uniquely and wonderfully and beautifully made. And so what works for you is very important, and it's there. You'll find it. It just takes some time.
Yeah. Wow, that's so powerful. So I want to pause, talk about Selah. What was that precious child's name? May we know?
Oh, her name was Emily.
Emily.
And she was born May 5th, 1999.
Oh, so we just passed that anniversary as well. So, wow, that just know that I, again, sit there with you and honor her life.
Thank you.
And
if it weren't for her, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
Exactly. I was just going to say, thank you for creating purpose out of pain. That's not always easy, and not everybody's called to do that, but I do love that you did that. So two comments. One is, you actually gave me an idea when you said picking up the rocks or laying the rocks down in community. And since we can't gather in the same way, we can do Zooms and we can do things like that. But and again, you guys, I want your thoughts and comments as you're listening to Angela, because as we give each other ideas and we see each other's pain and grief, and somebody else says, I see you, I see that, and I'm sorry. That's it. We don't have to do more than that, but that is so powerful. But what's interesting is in the Old Testament, I talked about the Jewish culture earlier, they did, when they were going into the promised land, which of course there had been a lot of grief, right, going through their journey to get to that promise, they said to stack stones and to remember these moments of what God had done and how he had moved. And it just really hit me that I may need to do some ceremonial, because I'm a kinesthetic learner as well. I like to walk through things. I may need to do a stacking stones memorial in a way to this time, just to honor this date that was supposed to be and have that moment. And so thank you for sharing just even the visual of the rocks. And will you come back and talk to us about how not to put other people's rocks in our backpack and carry? I'm serious, like that's a whole session. I would love to schedule that.
Absolutely. And and it's a great segue into kind of my second point that, you know, knowing yourself and knowing your rocks, knowing your pain is the first thing. But also, you know, grief and educating yourself on grief is very important as well. And knowing kind of what the grief community does, one of two things. They either call it grief stages or grief phases. I personally choose to call them phases because I don't think of grief as like a 12-step program or something where we kind of go through one stage and then you kind of you graduate out of that one and you go to the next one and then you get your chip and go to the next one, because we have what's called triggers and we have coping skills that we manage through each phase. And so, you know, like I said with Emily, you know, it's been 21 years, but it doesn't mean that May 5th doesn't roll around every single year. And May 5th just happens to be Cinco de Mayo. And so, you know, there's always that holiday that people celebrate, and there's always that time of year with, you know, going into spring. And so there's triggers that I have to learn to manage. Not only that, but we also had 2 other miscarried babies in years after her. So there's also those dates, and so there's things that we have to manage. So when we talk about grief, you do need to be educated about the phases. And I think you might have a slide that we can reference during this time.
I'm so glad. I love that. I'm going to put that up right now.
Yeah.
Because this was, when I talked about, this was the slide that really got people's attention when I just talked a little about how to thrive during challenging times and understanding, like you said, know yourself. I wanted to point out to people, know that you're in grief or you're anticipating grief and what that does with the brain. So, and I use this exact visual on purpose because I agree with you. I don't think it's a check off with grief, because what started me in all the work that I do was losing my friend. She was not 31 years old and 9 months pregnant, and we lost her and her baby Sydney. And I mean, I just adore her mom and her family. I can't imagine their grief because of the grief I carry every year, like you said, the anniversaries and thinking through that. But I love these ribbons because it's like I'm in and I'm out and I'm down and then I spin back up, and it's just, and one may come back and you may, like you said, when the trigger comes, you may be able to manage it differently, or you may put purpose to the pain, like you said, and that you have done. But what we can do that. So can you talk a little bit to this and share a little bit about kind of the key pieces? And by the way, before I do that, I have to ask, what is something that you could do for someone that their love language is gifts and they are grieving?
Wow. If it's immediate, what I normally tell people, like if they've had an immediate loss and you're like right there in the moment, meeting just those immediate needs like food, casserole, you know, a meal train, just the real immediate, what I call tangible needs. But also just those like memorial jewelry, like with birthstones or the names, like for children, like for the loss of a child, there are great websites that have like memorial jewelry where you can get their names or their birthstones, those kind of things. There's also, you know, I always encourage people, and this is again just me, to put those dates in your smartphone. You know, we're so blessed to have these smartphones now that give us the option to do a reminder yearly, so that you have that in your smartphone, and you can, if you know that your friend has that love language that's gifts, you could send them like a little memento yearly. Or if you know that your friend like you is words of affirmation, you can send a card yearly. If you know that their love language is acts of service, you can maybe send them a Starbucks gift card or take them out to lunch that day. You know, there's always something that can be done. Quality time, you know, that's just going and saying, hey, I'd love to go on a walk with you, or hey, I know this is a sensitive time of year. So, you know, depending on what the love language is, or depending on what you know you need. That's the other thing, again, in knowing yourself and knowing your needs. And what I work with clients is also learning to articulate your need is really important too. So, but that again comes with time.
Right? When you're grieving and somebody says, what can I do for you?
Yeah, that's hard.
It's so hard. And so I love, and I don't know if you do any divorce recovery or divorce grieving. Yes, good.
I do.
Head, yes.
And yeah,
Because
articulate.
I have lots of friends that have gone through that.
Yeah.
And they don't know what to say that they need, but they do need relationship. They do need things. So I love that part of what you're saying is figure out what you need. Like give yourself permission to ask, but first you have to figure it out.
Right.
Right. In order to do that.
Yeah, and it's like an onion. You have to peel it apart. And I'm just curious, you know, with our audience, if anyone's even seen this before, because, you know, the phases of grief for me was completely new. I had never been introduced to this. So, I mean, you can give your little, you know, thumbs up or whatever, or a click, or say, yeah, I've seen this, or no, this is brand new. Because in the grief community, sometimes they're referred to like this, with shock and denial, anger, depression, detachment, dialogue and bargaining, acceptance and empowerment, and return to meaningful life. One that they don't put in there is reconstruction. I use the word reconstruction kind of around where it says acceptance, because I think reconstruction is good. You know, when we're grieving, we can't go backwards. We have to reconstruct where we are and where we're going. So I love to throw the word, you know, the phase reconstruction in there as well, because, and some people use the term doors. If you think of it as, you know, I've got to look at a new door, going through a new door. I can't go back through the door I just came in from. You know, you can never go backwards. We're new, we're changed. The experience that we just went through, or the person that we just lost, we're not going to go backwards. We have to move forwards. And the other thing I really caution people, and especially people that are grieving, and also if you're talking to someone who's grieving, don't ever encourage them to move on. Here's the thing, moving on means that we're leaving everything in the past, okay? Moving forward means that we are pausing, we're evaluating what was important, we're evaluating what we are going to gather, and we're going to take with us and how we have been changed, either for the better or for the bitter, and we're moving forward. And what we're going to create as potential, and then eventually live out as our purpose. Because every grief and everything that we experience that's hurtful and painful is a defining moment in our life. And we can either, again, carry it in a bitter fashion or in a better fashion. And that's where I really encourage you, when you're looking at this in the shock and denial right there at the beginning, avoidance, that's what a lot of us do. We put it in a little box, we stick it on a shelf, and we don't want to talk about it, right? It's too painful. We just want to leave it alone, get back to work, divert, you know, get busy. Don't talk to me about it. Don't want to talk about it. Don't want to talk about it. Just want to avoid it. Don't want to talk about it, because if I talk about it, then I'll start to feel, and I don't want to feel.
Right.
It takes time.
And people get afraid. They get afraid of feeling anger. They get afraid of feeling that depression, detachment. Those next two phases are really strong, right? And we know, those of us that work in the realm of counseling and coaching and all of that, we know the power of anger can fuel you, right? Rather than rule you. We know that your sadness and that lack of energy is actually a gift, so that you can navigate through the feelings. But talk to, how do you move if you feel like you're still in shock and denial, avoidance, fear, numb? How do you move to the next one? Move, and I love you said move forward, because a lot of people that I've worked with going through different things, they keep saying, I keep reverting, I keep going back. Why am I sad again? And what I love is, no, that's part of the process. And that they have to even tell themselves that they're not going backwards, that you are moving forward, even feeling those feelings.
Well, here's where I like to insert the power of community and the power of prayer. And I will just speak from, you know, myself and also the Christian community. I learned a great deal in my grief walk from biblical characters who we know are real, but also ultimately Jesus. Okay, Jesus grieved, and Jesus was a fabulous example of the grief walk. And he grieved in the garden. He grieved that his friends went to sleep and didn't pray as he was praying. He then came back out and said, dudes, keep praying. I'm struggling. Pray for me. He went back in. He prayed, and then he resolved, you know, that wrestling and that bargaining that you see over here. Then he accepted what his calling was, Then he wept. Then he asked that the Father forgive us for what we were doing to him. And so he was such an example of grief. There were other biblical characters that grieved. There were, King David grieved the loss of his child. There's biblical references. So pour into the Bible in those biblical references and know that you're not alone. Pray and get great praying friends. Pour into community and those that will pray you through it. But here's the other thing. Know that this is a normal human emotion. And if we weren't supposed to feel it, then it wouldn't be so. And if Jesus felt it and these other biblical characters felt it and it was written about, then we're supposed to feel it too. And the other thing that I go back to a lot as well is it wasn't a Good Friday when Jesus hung on the cross and died. The only reason we call it Good Friday now is because we know about Resurrection Sunday and we know that he rose from the grave. So the depth of our pain is measured in direct relation to the extent of our joy. So the pain and the hurt that you feel now will be in direct correlation to the joy that you're going to feel and the good that can come from this pain. So don't stay there. Feel it, own it, and pause in it and learn from it. Because if you told me 21 years ago, I'd be on this call with you saying, oh, yeah, grief is great. I mean, I'm not saying grief is great. I'm saying I have learned more about myself through my grief and the depth of who I am and the depth of the human emotion. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It is purposeful. It is not for naught.
Yeah. And when you think of the bonding that happens when you, with yourself to yourself, of knowing yourself to God, as you seek out that relationship that only can comfort in a way that human beings can't. Mm-hmm. And then you also seek out community, the depths of those people that have walked through that with you. I have grief phases in my life. Those are the deepest, most powerful relationships because of the grief. So I get what you're saying when you say, yes, there's this pain, but proportionately, right, the depth of pain, the joy that can come as we move forward. I love not move on, move forward, right, is so incredibly key. So if you were to say, as we wrap up, if you were to say, Catherine, through these times right now, how do we help children navigate this? And what is a piece of advice that you could give to everybody to navigate through this feeling of grief?
Especially with children, it's a little unique because, their capacity to express emotion is different than us as adults. But the best thing to do is not to box it up. Give them the freedom to express it, in a safe way. You have to give them boundaries in a safe way. Coloring is a beautiful way to do it. Letting them use the colors and expressing colors. Sometimes that'll come out in very dark colors, or it can come out in very bright colors, depending on the range of emotions that they're feeling. Getting them to sing songs or use instruments, or, again, in a healthy way. They can beat a drum and get frustration out. They give them parameters to be expressive. We as adults, like I said, over here on this chart, these emotions can be very frightening, but again, find a healthy way to express those emotions. But I think the thing, again, for all of us to do is just own what you're feeling. Don't be afraid of it. Know that it's okay. Find somebody that can help you, whether it's a friend, a pastor, a great counselor. And again, don't give up on counseling. So many people give up so fast. Find someone who is right for you. And that's the important part. For me and my husband, we had to go through like 5 or 6 before we really found somebody who we felt we connected with, both relationally and spiritually, and from a age perspective. I wanted a woman, he wanted a man. We had to go through several. So don't give up on that if that's what you feel like you need in your relationship. And then also just give yourself time. Know that grief is a journey. It's not a destination. Okay. So you've got to give yourself time. Don't think you're going to just be over this quickly. You're never going, grief is a common denominator for all of us through this pandemic. We're all grieving something, whether it's a paycheck, whether it's our circumstance, whether it's a job loss, whether it's a friendship, whether it's not being able to see our family, whether it's a wedding, which, my heart, aches. I don't know that particular grief, but I know the grief that I'm carrying, but it's a common denominator. So we all need to be kind to one another. We all need to be great listeners and not compare our grief and go, oh, well, I know you're feeling that, but let me tell you what I'm feeling. Don't try to one up somebody. Just be great listeners, be kind, and be willing to just love someone where they're at. And maybe say, would it be, and here's the other thing, if someone doesn't know their love language or doesn't know about themselves, say, would it be helpful if I brought you something to eat? Would it be helpful if I just bought you a Starbucks? Would it be helpful if and just give them some choices of some things that could meet them in their love language, or just send them a card or a letter. Just let them know you love them, care for them. Just try.
Yeah, that's so good. I think any expression of humanity right now, one to another, is so huge. And so thank you for those very specifics, because I agree with you. And we can ask somebody what they need if they've done the work to figure that out. But to the people that have just sent me a text and said, I know that Corinne's wedding was this week, I'm so sorry. It's like, oh, one of our core things in this world is to have the question answered, do you see me? Right. Mm-hmm. And so if we just see people and say, how are you? I'll never forget my friend Cindy, who lost her precious son Taylor. She said, it's weird. I feel like people are avoiding me. And I said, maybe they don't know what to say, or they don't know they should bring them up. And because they don't want to trigger you to think about it if you seem good or you're not thinking about it. And she said, what people don't understand that haven't lost a child is you're always thinking about it. Right. So to have somebody validate, to say, I thought of Taylor today, just makes me not feel alone. I'll never forget that. So anyway, thank you so much. I'm going to stop the screen share real quick. How do people get in touch with you if they do want some individual counseling or to know more about your Rock Goodbye Angel ministry?
Well, they're two separate things, but rockgoodbyeangel.org. You can go to that. So it's rock, ROCK, goodbyeangel.org. And that's the nonprofit for pregnancy and infant loss support, free online groups, as well as groups that gather together. And then my counseling is Creative Bridge. You can email me, and it's creativebridgellc@gmail.com. Or you can call me. I can give you that number. It's 770-331-1281. And I will give you all the information and email you what you need. And I am doing the teletherapy, so I can do it from anywhere in the country, or I guess nation or world or whatever, with this great technology we have now.
It's truly amazing that we have access to community in a greater way. And you and I could have maybe been in a particular town and had this discussion and had several hundred or a few thousand people, but now this has the potential literally to help the world. So I want to do just one last thing. Number one, I want to just thank you for literally investing your time and to take the pain that you had and turn it to purpose. And I hope that you guys will do this with us on the feed. I just want to say, my friend Kelly and Sydney, to say their names, and to say Emily, and to say Corinne, to say Dylan, those that have lost. Like, if we just say the name of those that are grieving because we love them, and whether they're not with us here now on earth, but we say you're always remembered. And if you are still here and it's something that hasn't taken a life, but it has stolen something from you, we just want to honor you. And I hope that you guys will just put the names of the people, whether you tag them or you just write out their name and say, I see you, I know you've had loss, and I just want you to know that I love you. So thank you again, Angela. We appreciate the work that you do in the world. And I appreciate you doing this with me so I could put words to some of my grief with our incredible community.
Thank you for having me.